Now, back here at home, the African National Congress in Parliament is reportedly unhappy with the GNU partner Democratic Alliance over a proposal to establish a committee that will oversee the presidency. The ANC says portfolio housed within the presidency are already being monitored by other parliamentary portfolio committees, although this was a recommendation of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. The ANC's Chief Whip, Mdumiseni Ntuli, joining me in studio to unpack this for us. Mpemba, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Thabo. Good evening to the viewers at home, and much appreciated for having us.
So Parliament, as of course given the mandate by Section 57 of the Constitution, can make rules and orders and that help to regulate the business of government. And one of the issues that has been clearly with this committee, even in the sixth administration, is the setting up of an oversight committee to look into the presidency. Now, what is important here, amongst the many other things, improvement of question time and so on and so forth, which we would have discussed, I suppose, is this particular deliberation on this committee, which the ANC would have lost through a vote, basically, which tells you it's a new day for the ANC.
Well, Thabo, let me explain to you. I think just give me a minute or so just to give you the context, because unless you locate what happened on that day in Parliament within a particular and an appropriate context, it may be difficult to understand it. We had something that is called the Subcommittee on Rules, which is a small body that accounts to the Rules Committee. Okay. So we gave a mandate to the subcommittee to look at many issues. Among those issues was this question of the accountability of the presidents. And the question that they needed to respond on is whether or not the existing mechanisms are sufficient for Parliament to hold the presidents, not the president, accountable. Yes. So they came back with a report. Now, the subcommittee is made up of a multi-party committee. So they came back with a report. And their report said, look, Parliament had conducted a study a few years ago. Unfortunately, they only went to England and one African country, I think it's Kenya. Yeah. And the information at their disposal is quite insufficient for them to make an informed judgment about what kind of a mechanism do we need to set up as South Africans, particularly because, as you know, in our case, the president is the head of the executive and the head of state. Yes. So unlike in other jurisdictions where a prime minister or a president is a member of parliament, in our case, it's not a member of parliament. So when you devise additional mechanism from what you have, you've got to answer those questions so that you are not going to be offline. So the committee comes back and it says to us now as a big body, look, we've looked at this thing. Our view is that at the moment, the Speaker must write to the President and say to the President, in the time being, let's agree that all functions in the Presidency, which are not yet located to any portfolio committee, from among those that are located in the Presidency, must be accounted for through the portfolio committee on monitoring, evaluation, planning and evaluation. Yes. And then that must give us an opportunity for the next few months or so to further study the kind of the mechanism that, if any, may be required for us to strengthen the accountability of the president. Yeah. So when the committee brings a recommendation, that's logical. Yeah. But you've got to reject it.
It was logical to you.
Yeah, it's logical.
They completely rejected it. Now, your GNU partners, the DA said it's rubbish, this resolution.
Let me tell you
EFF said it's rubbish, this resolution.
Let me tell you why the
nothing
DA,
about this resolution.
Let me tell you why the DA behaves like that. Yeah. Over the past 10 years, the DA has been advocating for the establishment of the portfolio committee without necessarily providing cogent motivation why the existing mechanisms are not sufficient, except that what they want is the president to appear before them and be scrutinized, not the presidents as they purport to report.
So the issue that they raise, that there are items that appear on budget 1, for example, around building of or eradication of pit latrines, where no one is held accountable, but billions of rands are being spent on such.
So we agree. We certainly agree with them on that. That's why we said all functions in the presidency, which may not be allocated to any of the portfolio. Remember, in the president, there are 3 ministers. There's a minister of monitoring, planning and evaluation. There's intelligence. There's a minister of women, youth, and people living with disability. So we said all critical issues in the what is called vote 1, budget vote 1 of the presidents, which are not accounted by any of these departments must be devolved to belong to one of these departments.
Yeah.
While in the meantime, the Portfolio Committee on Monitoring, Planning and Evaluation, when it receives the report of that department in Parliament, it must then empower us to understand whether that mechanism works effectively, which allows that the issues be devolved, so that if it doesn't, that committee must say to the Rules Committee, no. Yes, of course, there has been a devolution of the issue of this task to our Portfolio Committee, but we still think the mechanism are not sufficient. Yeah. While parallel to that, the Rules Committee is supposed to then say, in a situation like ours, which other countries are like us, where the president is both the head of the executive and the head of state, what mechanism do they put in place? What can we learn from them? And what is it that we then devise, which would be a South African characteristics? Because there's a consensus among us that we must make sure that we strengthen accountability, including that.
But this view that says even though you agree, you still want to set up exceptionalism for the president to have different rules.
No, Tabo, that's essentially political expedience. It's not the exceptional circumstance, it's not the exceptionalism. The key question that we needed to respond to, you have these details you are saying are not accounted for. Put them to a committee. We agree on that, sure. Then let's investigate what kind of a mechanism must we set up going forward, which must strengthen the role of Parliament to ensure that the president is accountable. Yeah. Now, that is not running away from the issue. We agree with all political parties that let's strengthen accountability, not just of the presidents, of everybody that has to be accountable to Parliament. But what we do not support as the ANC, it's not necessarily that we're opposed to the establishment of the committee. We need to be understood properly. We are saying maybe the Portfolio Committee, the way in which the DA is suggesting, which is ordinary like any other Portfolio Committee, may not be adequate. If you look at the Zondo report, it says it's recommended that Parliament must think about setting up either a Portfolio Committee, which may not necessarily be exactly the same as other Portfolio Committees, because we are now dealing with the President, who's both a head of state, and to whom the executive authority of the Republic rests with.
Right.
Now, without answering that question, what kind of mechanism you want to put in place? You can't then rush and say, let's set up a Portfolio Committee. That's not how Parliament should work. Parliament should be informed by some kind of
Either
science.
way, I mean, don't you agree the fact that you already have a planning, monitoring and evaluation committee that has been given some of these responsibilities in the interim, that it is a committee? So whether you call it monitoring and evaluation, you can call it anything, but it would be a committee that would look at that.
Sure, you are quite right. The key issue for us, what kind of a committee do you set up? Let me give you an example. If you go to England, where they went for a study tour, they were informed that there for a prime minister to account, the chairpersons of various portfolio committees combined together constitute a body where the prime minister must come and account.
Yeah.
We have not even had an opportunity in the Rules Committee to interrogate that and say, what would be in the best interest of us as South Africans? Is that mechanism, for instance, not the best one, where those who are chairing? Do we need a separate portfolio committee? Do we need what? So that is a conversation we were saying in the Rules Committee.
The feeling is that you can discuss those rules. You can discuss those rules, but right now agree on the fact that you're setting up a committee. What the rules would look like, how many times the president would appear, who will be sitting in there, and whatever, are things that you can...
No, we are missing the point. The point is that it may not be a portfolio committee. So when your statement is predicated on the assumption that the only platform for the president to account is a portfolio committee, I'm saying that cannot be the only mechanism. That's why Parliament is supposed to say, we're supposed to be immersing ourselves on the discussion and the research in terms of what is happening in the continent and the rest of the world, in a situation where you have a president who's both the head of state and the head of the executive, who is not a member of Parliament by that.
What makes that particular? Because you keep highlighting that point, even in the meeting, you kept highlighting it. What makes that particular circumstance different to say, if you've got this particular type of a president, then a portfolio committee might not be the right place?
The first option is that the president is not a member of Parliament. I understand the counter-argument will say even Chapter 9 institutions are headed by people who are not members of Parliament, and they are still required to account in Parliament. Sure, I accept that. But the Constitution defines the existence of those bodies, a consequence of which is that they must go and account in Parliament. The president of this country is the head of the executive, is the head of the state. performs certain functions that he is not accountable to Parliament about those functions. That is why we are saying, if we want him to account and we want to be clear in terms of delineating the roles he performs as a head of state, the roles he performs as a head of cabinet, we've got to understand what is it, what kind of a mechanism, is the portfolio committee appropriate or there's another mechanism? Now, we've not engaged in that kind of a detail. You know why we've not done so? It's because we're starting from the end. We should be starting by saying what kind of detailed accountability we want to ensure the president complies with.
Yes.
Once you answer that question, the second question naturally will follow. What mechanism?
So as a sub-rules committee, you've identified there are gaps, but you don't know what those gaps are.
No, what the sub-rules committee said is that the other political parties have been raising issues, for instance, saying the president set up a commission of inquiry. The president will appoint an envoy to go and work in a certain region of the continent or the world. Yeah. So they were making the statement and saying, but we don't get accountability for this. So we said, sure, we understand that. And another concern that they were raising was that the president was contemplating setting up what was called a state holding company to manage the SOEs.
Yes.
And that was raising a lot of concern among the political parties.
You've disbanded the Department of Public Enterprises, but now you're taking it, putting it in the presidency,
that is why
giving it more executive powers.
That is why
over those
the
kind
ANC
of
then, Thabo, the ANC's position was that, sure, those issues are valid. If there is no platform where they are properly accounted, it's incumbent upon Parliament to look at mechanisms that must be introduced to enforce that level of accountability. Now, you can't say the only way to enforce accountability is a portfolio committee. Now, what was disappointing, and in fact, what was disingenuous of the chief whip of the DA, Mr. George Michalakis, he is a member of the sub-rules committee. I'm not a member. I'm a member of the main body. We have built an understanding as the GNU partners that where there are contentious issues where we may be fundamentally disagreeing, the courtesy is to tell one another. Even if it means I want to withdraw an ANC position or he doesn't withdraw a DA position or any other party, but the courtesy to say, on this question, we are not agreeing, and this is the line we're going to take. Now, he sits in the sub-rules committee. It makes recommendations with nobody deviating. He comes to the main committee of the rules, sitting 2-3 people away from me, has no courage, no courtesy to say, Chief Whip, look, on this matter, we're taking a different position as the DA. And he does so.
Yeah.
And when
so
he
you're
does
taken by surprise?
And when he does so, of course, he surprises both the ANC and other GNU partners except one, which is the Freedom Front Plus. Because the two of them have held this view for many years. The other political parties, I mean, the EFF and the MK part, really, what they saw is an opportunity to come into the ANC and embarrass the ANC. And so they decided they're going to support this DA chief whip. But if he was working within the confines of the GNU principle, he would have understood that as much as we may disagree on that issue, he should have told me that, Chief Whip, on this matter, I'm deviating from the recommendation of the Rules Committee, which I was part of. Now that I'm in the main body, I've got this proposal. If we don't agree, we don't agree.
Yeah. Is it not part of the many other things that the GNU partners are disagreeing on, which the DA will tell you that they might feel the ANC would have bulldozed those things into existence? The Bella Act, the NHI, the international relations posture that they want reviewed, and so on and so forth. So the ANC does that. We can also do that.
Thabo, let me just say this to you and the viewers at home. South Africa is a country, not the ANC, has got established national positions on international questions. The Palestinian question and many others that the ANC-led government has been pursuing over decades. It's not just merely an ANC position, it's a position of the country. Now, if the DA is concerned about some positions that have been taken by the country, they are perfectly able to engage with the ANC about those matters, but they can't say, we are therefore at liberty to betray the confidence of the GNU on the basis that in any case, you are advancing certain positions and perspectives, which in our view are inconsistent with our own interests or the interests of the constituents that we represent. We can't work like that. We've got to say what is on the agenda today, where do we agree or disagree? And in this case, they were perfectly at liberty to raise this matter. Yeah. All I am concerned about is just the courtesy to say, I'm deviating from the meeting I attended yesterday
Yes.
of the subcommittee. I'm introducing a new proposal in this meeting. Are you willing to support me? And hear me out. If I say no, so he can proceed with that and get the support of whoever that want to support him. But to simply stand up and surprise me, I'm the chief whip of the ANC, the chief whip of the TA. So basically, those are the senior leaders of the two parties represented in Parliament who are in that portfolio committee. That he decided not to tell me communicated a much more larger message than what he did on that particular day.
Yeah.
Because what it said is that he was willing to work with anyone as long as it advances the parochial interest of the Democratic Alliance, even if it's at the expense of the well-agreed and established protocol of the Government of National Unity.
So is this something that is going to go to the clearinghouse?
Well, I'm sure it may be one of the issues that we're going to reflect upon. But you see, the ANC, as I said to you, this matter has gone back to the Sub-Rules Committee to be debated there. Of course, now they are going to debate in the context of the decision of the main body that create a portfolio committee.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be a conversation there. What kind of a committee, a portfolio committee we are setting up? How should it be constituted? What will be its mandate? What are these details that the Zondo Commission's report spoke about? And can we all agree that these details are still unaccounted for? So that exercise is still going to take place there. It's inevitable that when we meet in the GNU clearinghouse, which I'm also a member, we will have to reflect on these experiences because, as I'm saying, they communicate a message of people who are not willing to work honestly. On a Bella bill, as the ANC, we took a position, we went to an extensive public consultation, the people of South Africa agreed. That's why that can't even be taken to court. They want to engage, and we really we're happy that there's an engagement between the parties in the clearinghouse. But the issue that really is of discomfort to us is the level of dishonesty. That when you have changed in the positions that was adopted yesterday,
yeah,
you have no courtesy. You don't show any courtesy to say to your GNU partners, I'm no longer with you on this matter, which you are perfectly at liberty to do because we represent political. There would be instances, by the way.
Be upfront about it.
There would be instances, by the way, Thabo, where I will advance a view of the ANC, irrespective of what the DA wants.
Yes.
As long as that view is a position of the ANC, and in our view as the ANC, it resonates with the overwhelming interest of the South African population. Whether the DA agrees or doesn't agree, there would be instances where we're going to say, no, but we don't agree on this matter. And we don't think that a disagreement on one issue must suggest a collapse of a GNU. It must be understood that this is a contested terrain. We come from different political, ideological perspectives. It's inevitable that in certain cases we're not going to agree. But what I will do as the chief of the ANC, I will tell him that on this issue, because of our own view as the movement, which has got a history, either ideologically or because of what the national interest requires, we will not take a position that agrees with you. I will say that to him.
Pemba, let's leave it there. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much
for coming. That's Chief Whip of the ANC in Parliament. Still on the way, legendary composer Lebu M is standing by to pay tribute to the late Quincy Jones.